interrupt this program to bring you a special news bulletin. The Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii by air, President Roosevelt has just announced.
I was in the basement. My father was painting something on December 7th. And we were in the basement working, and he had the radio on. And that's how we heard about the war starting.
That's all we had on our mind was what's going on in the war. Everything in the newspaper was about the war. Everything on the radio was about the war. And it was such a big topic that it just swallowed up everything else.
The war period was invasive of everyone's everyday life. So anywhere you would go, you would hear news about the war.
The U.S. was very afraid that the Nazis would attack the U.S. Everybody had darkened their homes. That's in case they would be flying over to bomb us.
It affected every family. If you had an automobile, the only way you could get gas was go and register. You got so many gallons, and food, your mother would go to buy a steak, and there wouldn't be any steaks. All the food was going into the military.
Families had to cut back on the items they purchased, food items, grocery items, tires for the car, gasoline.
World War II was entering its third bloody year. No one could escape the war's devastation, not even the students at Maine High School.
There were over 69 students died during the war. There was assemblies that were held at Maine High School to recognize those people who lost their lives.
Some of our classmates were killed during the war. I don't remember their names anymore.
On December 1st, 1944, Frank Holmes, the superintendent of Maine Township High School, called an emergency school meeting. War-weary and tired of inaction, Superintendent Holmes challenged his students. Their mission would be to raise $500,000 in war bonds in 2 weeks. If they reached their goal, the funds would be used to build and dedicate a Douglas C-54 Skymaster aircraft to be used in the war.
War bond is simply an IOU. You give the government $25 right now, years later they'll give you $50.
The money raised from the sale of war bonds went to fund the military to conduct their campaigns in the war.
All across the country, schools, civic associations were encouraged through publicity, major publicity effort by the government to sell war bonds.
War bonds were a big thing. The principal at Maine, he challenged the class of 45 to buy a Douglas C-54 that was built out at O'Hare Field, which is now O'Hare Field. So the four classes, class of 45, 46, 47, and 48, set out to accomplish this.
Local citizens all heard the same plea: pledge any war bond purchases to Maine Township High School. It was a daunting challenge, but even in 1944, students created their own widespread social network and set it into action.
The Maine Township High School students set out to sell war bonds. Their homeroom teachers organized opportunities for them to go out into the neighborhoods and actually go door to door, asking neighbors to contribute to the war effort by purchasing war bonds. There were no computers. No one had cell phones or mobile devices. There was no way for them to just send out a message to all their friends instantaneously.
Steadily, the war bond drive gained steam. Competitions between clubs, homerooms, and classes sprang up. Nothing stopped the students.
The students had had a great time selling these war bonds because they weren't just trying to raise money to buy the bonds. They wanted to beat out their other students. So it was a big rivalry, but it was all fun because it was a great goal.
During one cold, stormy night, over 400 teenagers descended upon the streets of Park Ridge and Des Plaines. They walked house to house, door to door. In spite of the weather, that one evening's effort raised $164,000. On deadline day, a collective hush fell over the school as the final count was made. Finally, Superintendent Holmes emerged from his office. The goal was met. The school exceeded the $500,000 challenge by over $50,000.
It must have been this feeling of great achievement for those students to actually have accomplished that goal.
The War Bond Drive had a goal of selling over $500,000. They blew through that. In today's dollars, that's over $7 million.
As a reward, Holmes sent the kids home and gave them an extra day of Christmas vacation. Upon the news of the school's success, workers at the Douglas Aircraft Plant at O'Hare Field began work on plane number 332, a brand new Douglas C-54 Skymaster aircraft.
Near Maine Township High School was a factory. It was a Douglas Aircraft Company. A number of students, families moved to this area so that their parents, primarily their fathers, could get jobs there.
My father-in-law built airplanes at the Douglas plant.
My father, he was employed by Douglas Plant. He worked at Douglas Plant for quite a few years.
The Douglas Aircraft Factory had a direct impact on the lives of students here at Maine High School. Many students actually got jobs at the Douglas Aircraft Company.
93 feet long and 117 feet wide at the wingtips, the four-engine Skymaster was a wartime behemoth. Capable of transporting troops, supplies, and wounded over great distances, Skymasters also served as a flying headquarters for General Douglas MacArthur, Winston Churchill, and President Franklin Roosevelt. On February 16, 1945, Maine High School's plane was dedicated at Douglas Field in front of the entire student body.
After the plane was finished and we were going to give it to the government, everybody went out to the airfield, whole school, to look at it and be photographed with it.
One of the rewards that the government could give is to actually name the plane that the fundraiser, quote-unquote, bought.
Faster and higher, that's the Maine Flyer, is what it was. And that was printed on the front of the plane.
The plane that joined school, community, and country together was ready for service. Before the end of the war, Maine alumni spotted their flyer delivering supplies to naval bases in California.
The cargo planes, such as the Maine Flyer, were used to transport materials and goods, and even soldiers overseas.
One fella in the class, he said that he flew on the plane at one time. The plane was a hospital plane during the Korean War.
Today, the Maine Flyer lies rotting in a deserted airfield in Arizona, under the control of the Navajo Nation.
It's in pieces, there's no tail section. I understand they got some parts off of it put into the museum, and it was quite a feat to find this, and the class of 45 is happy they found it.
After 70 years, efforts are underway to finally bring the plane back home.
The lessons that came from this experience during this time brought in a sense of community and purpose in their lives during a time when The world was in crisis.
What Maine High School did was truly special. This was about a group of teenagers coming together, doing something that's bigger than themselves. It's amazing that something so horrible as World War II brought out the best in people.